Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Rise Up year-end education session. It's nice to have everyone on the call. My name is Carly Beneteau. I am the Rise Up program manager here for the Rise Up program. My pronouns are she, her, and today I'm wearing a green shirt and I have dark brown hair. With me today to support the event is my colleague Jordan Hunsberger. She's another wonderful program manager from Boundless. She's going to be monitoring the chat and here to help with the technical side of things. Her name is listed in Zoom as Jordan-Boundless. Thanks so much for your help today, Jordan. So as we gather today from different parts of the country, let us take time to reflect on our privilege to live and work on the lands that we do. I'm joining you today from Guelph, Ontario. We are guests here and we should reflect upon the responsibility to care for this land, the people who live here today, and the generations to come. If our actions today can move us towards reconciliation, we should pause and make those decisions with intention and gratitude. This place that we call Guelph has served as the traditional lands and place of refuge for many peoples over time, but more specifically, the Attawandarunk and the Haudenosaunee. This land is held as treaty lands in the territory with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Guelph lies directly adjacent to the Haldimand Tract and is part of a long-established traditional hunting ground for the Six Nations of the Grand River. Many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples who have come across Turtle Island call Guelph home today. We are privileged to work and live on these lands. A few foundations for today's session. We are recording and we'll share a link to today's session, the PowerPoint slides, and the resources with you afterwards, including a French captioned version. To turn on Zoom's live closed captions, click the Show Captions icon in the Zoom control bar at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical issues, please feel free to send Jordan or me a message in the chat or raise your Zoom hand by clicking the React button in your toolbar, then clicking the Raise Hand option, and we will help you out. Please double check that your name in Zoom today is your preferred name, so we can refer to you if you have your hand raised or have a question in the chat. Having your camera on is great, but it is optional. Please feel free to stretch, stand, or step away today as needed. So here at Boundless, we work to support businesses to start, grow, and thrive in Guelph, the surrounding communities, and across Canada. If you know of any other companies in need of support and help, please reach out to us and contact us. Jordan's going to put the Boundless website in the chat just for more information. We would like to give a special thank you to our Rhyze Up funder, the National Research Council of Canada, the Industrial Research Program, NRC-IRAP for short, who enables us to put on this program to provide our companies with help and put on these types of events. Thank you so much to IRAP for their continued support with the program. Thank you as well to our corporate sponsors, Danby, Invest in Guelph, Synergetics, and Provision IP. We really appreciate their grateful generosity and support in everything that we do. We have a full agenda for today. So right now we're going through our welcome and our Rhyze Up program highlights. Going to turn it over to our educational session at around 11:10 Eastern Time. We will pause for a 10-minute break at 12:30 Eastern. Go on to some next steps and resources, so you'll see me again. And then we'll also have our second session at around 12:45 Eastern Time as well. So for the first part, some program highlights. So from the Rhyze Up program this past year, wanted to share with you a couple ways that the program has supported companies and its impact. So we've had 32 companies this fiscal year participate in a discovery and get recommended next steps. We had 23 companies participate in a project to give them that hands-on support in tackling obstacles to growing and scaling. 32 as well, companies received tailored individual leadership coaching with 1,400 hours of mentorship with 25 different mentors involved. So a lot of really cool things to highlight. We will also be getting more specific information like number of employees hired, any processes created, IP created, as we survey our companies when they finish the program. So stay tuned for a survey and further details to come. And here is a list of the companies who have taken part in Rhyze Up this past fiscal. So if you can give them a round of Zoom applause by using that react little emoji in your Zoom control button, or use a reaction or give a little high five in the chat. There are our first 16 companies. So again, we had 32. So a wide variety of different sectors joining us from 7 different provinces, as well as our other 16 wonderful companies that participated in the program this year. Fun fact, over 200 programs have participated in Rhyze Up since we got our program started in 2019. So way to go to those companies, and I know a couple of them are on the call today. Very excited to have you in the program. So as I said, since our program got started, we've actually been able to work with 8 different provinces across Canada. So giving you a snapshot of where those companies were located this fiscal year, majority of them were from Ontario, about 48%. Next highest, British Columbia, and a great mix across the country from Alberta, Manitoba, Quebec, and Nova Scotia as well. So again, if you know of any other women-led, co-led, co-founded companies who are in need of help, please send us their information, and we would love to get into contact with them and help them. This leads me to our first education session of the day. It is my pleasure to welcome our presenter, Tara Lehman, to take us through how being curious can build stronger teams. A little bit about our presenter. After over 23 years of working in the trucking and transportation industry in many different capacities, eventually to leadership, Tara opened her business with her sister, Twin Life Coaching and Business Services, to help individuals and businesses create goals, provide accountability, and challenge limiting beliefs. Tara has worked with various industries through leadership and business coaching and consulting to bring light to visions and provide support and guidance to her varied clients. She joined Boundless Accelerator mid-2023 to make an impact on how SMEs can grow and prosper through being an industry expert within trucking and transportation, as well as general mentor and leadership coaching for business owners and leaders. So Tara, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and it's over to you for our first session.
All right, great. Let me just get my screen going here, and we can get started. It'll just take a second to load. All right, let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, all good, Tara.
All good? All right. If I do look over to the side, it's because I have another screen there so that I can see you and potentially the chat. But Jordan and Carly, I'm going to ask you if you can monitor those for me. Thank you for the great introduction as well. I'm really looking forward to sharing more about building great teams around curiosity. I want to thank anybody who did the pre-work. If you did it, keep that situation that you thought of in mind. The self-reflection is there for you to use. So even if you were not able to complete it, don't worry. You can do it at any time. It's great to reflect so that you can learn where you can improve at all times. I also want to ensure everybody knows it doesn't matter the size of your team, whether you're a solopreneur and you're asking friends, family, or others, your coach for assistance, to having one employee or contractors, to being a massively large company. Being curious will build a great team and a great leader. So this applies to everybody, honestly. So what are we going to cover today? Well, we're going to cover curiosity as a leadership advantage, asking questions, how to have better conversations by being curious, how this can improve trust and collaboration within a team, and also how you can make this stick, because it is a habit that needs to be built. All right, so I do know I have a poll here. So we're going to talk about curiosity as a leadership advantage. So if we can put the poll up about how often does curiosity and asking questions guide your leadership decision. Let's see where you all sit here. All right, looking good. Excellent. All right, I think we can close that poll, Carly. Thank you. Or Jordan. All right. So it looks like some of you are using it, which is great. And sometimes when we think we're using it a lot, we're not necessarily always doing it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but it's great to see that some of you are also already using questions to help guide decisions. All right. What could change if we really listened to our team by asking questions before we act, before we give out directives, before we give out work tasks? What if we started to ask questions and really listen to our team? What do you think might change? Feel free to pop it in the chat, or if you're more comfortable, you can raise your hand. Just look at my other screen here to see if anybody has any answers to this. What can happen if we really listen to our team? Yes, definitely understanding of different perspectives. Really, really needed, especially when we were small. Anybody else? Building confidence for sure. Valued and heard. I'm going to talk about a lot of that today. Being acknowledged, minimizing assumptions. That's a good one as well. Yes. Employees feeling their opinion and voices heard. Absolutely. And even how the work is done. All great answers, everybody. Well done. Yes, like asking questions can do all of these things, but then one of the most important things it does is create a psychological safety. It helps us feel valued, it helps us feel welcome, and it helps us feel heard. It is a skill that can drive better communication. And again, it doesn't matter what size organization you're in. And even if you don't have direct employees, but you're using contractors or even for vendors, it really can be a curiosity thing that helps you understand the other side of a story. Leaders who also ask those thoughtful questions help employees, as you guys really well noted, feel heard, valued, engaged. We really do want to be seen. Humans want to feel that they're a valuable part of something. So if it's your team or if they're a vendor or whatever, people do still want to feel that they have a voice. So thoughtful questions will help build that. And curious leaders also create teams that collaborate, innovate, and work smarter together. So let me ask you this. How does it help us be creative and innovative? You can either put it in the chat or raise a hand if anybody has anything what do you think? How does it make us more innovative and creative? Yes, diverse input, absolutely. Ideas grow, yes, because remember, your idea may not be the best one out there, right? Creates buy-in, absolutely. Good, all great answers. We want innovation and creativity, especially if your company is struggling on sales or feeling, the heat of the economy going on. So creativity and innovation is really, really important. So we're going to explore today some practical ways to use that curiosity to build those stronger teams, whether again, that could be a contractor to a vendor to your direct employees. And we're not going to try and add many more meetings or any more stress on you either. All right. So curiosity, it's a behavior that you need to do. It's not a trait. So a definition here, an explanation. It is the intentional act of asking questions, seeking to understand and exploring ideas. We can think we understand somebody or something they're saying, but we take in thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pieces of information every second. So it's almost impossible to say that we'll all 100% receive that information the exact same way. So it is really important that if somebody's looking confused, they're not providing ideas, or something else might be going on, you're not getting your work done the way you hope, it could be because there was a misunderstanding. And trust will allow you and the employee to then start being able to ask questions to clarify. Curiosity is something that leaders need to practice. You're not necessarily born with this. So it becomes that muscle you have to work every day. You know, there are days where we're going to feel stressed. We have so much going on, we don't know where to start. And so we might just be demanding things of people instead of using curiosity to find out what might be a roadblock. And so we do really need to do this really intentionally. So, why it matters for teams. Teams will perform better when leaders listen before they act or demand or give directives. It builds trust. Psychological safety, as you guys have already noted, that value, that heard, that being seen, we want that. And it creates that mental ability for us to believe that we are trusted, that we're listened to, and we have ideas that you want to hear. It can encourage smarter decisions too, because again, you might not have the best solution or decision. Maybe somebody else has one that's better. Definitely encourages a collaboration because we are asking questions, and as we noted, innovation. We want a culture where people are engaged because they're working for us. We want them to speak highly of our company. We want them to be motivated to come into work every day and maybe go beyond what the expectations are. And we want them to be willing to contribute and feel comfortable doing that. So let's talk about putting this in action. It's not a checklist. You don't put it on your to-do list today and say, was I curious with Tara? It is something that you have to practice every day, right? It's that thing we have to intentionally do. So it's not a checklist item unless maybe you want to make sure you're checking in with Tara and asking a specific question, but it is an action. We need to move from the directives to more open questions. So an example on that might be, I need this on my desk by Friday at noon. Instead, if we say, what support do you need to hit that deadline, which is Friday at noon? There's a different conversation. So who can tell me how this feels differently for an employee? What do you guys think? How are they going to see this differently? You, again, chat, you can raise your hand. Any ideas how it feels? Even if I said it to you. Yes, the stress level goes way down, doesn't it? Definitely more collaborative. You feel comfortable because now you can say, you know what, actually, Carly, you're the one who's holding me back because I'm still waiting on a decision on XYZ from you, right? And yes, that belief that you're feeling supported, the leader's with you on this, absolutely. All of those things are true. Sorry. Um, it also uncovers insights, roadblocks, and it builds engagement and innovation and shows that you are valuing something. So that roadblock could be Carly not actually, approving the budget yet. So how can I get something done when I'm waiting on Carly who's asking me about it? But if she just says, I need this on my desk by Friday at noon, I feel very much stressed out because how do I ask Carly to approve that budget that's holding me back? Sorry, Carly, for picking on you. It's just easier one to pick on today. Sorry about that. I have a question for everybody. So if you did the homework, and if you didn't, that's fine too. Think of a recent directive or situation that you gave. How could you have been curious instead of directing? So I'd love for a couple people here to share. Maybe it's a recent directive you gave that you're thinking, now maybe I should have adjusted to a question. Anybody want to share? Again, you can raise your hand for this one if it's a little bit longer. Who wants to share this morning? Everybody's quiet. No one's going to think of something. Okay, so we all gave a directive. You're right, Danny. It is early for you. We all give a directive every day. And it could be, I need this report run. It could be, I need that report, whatever that is. How could we redirect that? Or what are some redirection questions that you can think of?
Would you just say like when do you think you can have this report done?
Yeah, because maybe we're going to hear something else that is telling us that, if I say, well, I need it by Friday, then it might start that conversation where then you can then tell me, Danny, oh, I need you to approve that budget, right? So there's different ways that we can absolutely use these types of questions instead of doing the directive all the time. Okay. All right. Thank you, Danny,
So,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, this is
Yes.
Anila. I just wanted to also comment one thing that worked for me is
Mm-hmm.
that when I want to get something done, um, usually I found that there is a little bit of gap in terms of what the ask is and how the other person understands the ask.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually have a very quick session, maybe a 10-15 minutes saying, just want to make sure you understand the request and ask and the underlying details. And I found that I think at least 50-60% of the time, there's some gap that is not very evident, and that meeting really clears it up. So I'm not as frustrated when I get the final outcome because initial expectations have been set.
Very good point. Like I said, we all take information in differently. So what we think we're asking as a directive and what we think we're going to get might be completely different from what another person thinks, right? So very good point. I'm going to be talking about that as well, but it's an excellent point to make. How we communicate really, really, really needs to be almost summarized to make sure we're understanding and that they understand what we're looking for. Thank you for the comment.
My pleasure.
All right. Get the screen to change for me. I want to share some questions that can help you unlock some insight into different things depending on what you're working on. Open-ended questions. What do open-ended questions start with? What words do they start with? You can just put this in the chat. Anybody want to hazard a guess here? Yeah, you do start with a W, Carly. Who, what, when, where? Yes, absolutely. So they invite exploration, the who, the what, the where, the why, the how, the when. What's your perspective on this project? Right? Those types of things. Or who do you feel might be the best person to handle X, Y, and Z? Where are you at currently with regards to this project for customer ABC? We get a lot more information when we invite the exploration. Clarifying questions. These are about the understanding, which is what you were just mentioning as well. Can you walk me through your thinking? This is really, really a good question to ask if someone's providing you with an idea or you're really not understanding why they gave you what they gave you. You can ask them for where it came from. Can you walk me through why you made that decision? I'm trying to understand that. Can you walk me through your thinking through this process? It really can help us understand the other person better. Reflective questions. Always encourage self-reflection. And you guys did this as your own pre-work, but a self-reflection can be done when you're talking to people. So if you have somebody struggling with something, maybe it's getting on time to meetings, maybe it's error that is being repetitive, you could ask them what worked well for them in the past to overcome this challenge, this issue, not getting to meetings on time, that type of thing, so that you can better understand that person. When we know what's worked for them in the past, we can work with that rather than just start getting upset and angry that they're always late for meetings and, just blowing up on them. We can actually have a conversation and ask those questions to figure out how we can get them there on time. Future focused questions are great. when we need solutions or when we're creating ideas. So if your challenge is sales right now, you could say, if we solve this challenge and we exceeded our key performance indicator on sales and we got above and beyond, what would that look like? Sometimes that can help us then come up with solutions that could actually work for us because we're bringing in the idea of brainstorming, which is great as well. Questions that might not always work. Closed questions. What is a closed question? Can anybody tell me?
Is it any question that ends in just like a one-word answer, like yes or no?
Yes, exactly. It's a yes or no. So closed question limits discussion. It's typically answered with yes or no. So did you finish the report? If I'm asked that, I could say no. Now you have to ask me more questions in order to understand the why behind it. If we just said, I don't have the report on my desk yet. Can you let me know if you, why maybe it's not there, or what roadblocks you have, or whatever that question might be, depending on what you're looking for. That is much more open to exploration than it is with a very limited discussion. Leading questions, they are suggesting the answer that you are hoping to get. This really does limit the authentic input that we're looking for from our, it could be your contractors, your direct employees, your indirects, your vendors, your customers. So don't you think we should do it this way? And then you give your way, is really trying to limit that authentic input and really trying to lead with what you're hoping they will say. But here's the thing, none of us are perfect. And so we might think that our way is the best way. But trust me, when you ask other people, sometimes your way is great, but somebody has another way that's even better. So it really, we do want to explore these things so that we're not leading into solutions for problems or challenges. So I want to have a little practice here. How could you use the top part here, the open-ended, clarifying, reflective, or future-focused questions with curiosity instead of the directive, I need you to drop everything on your calendar today and get this done by 5. I see Danny's hands up.
Yes. So instead of directing somebody on how to fix a budget overrun, you could say, I noticed a budget overrun on this project. It's tracking to lose money. I wonder, can you walk me through maybe how we got here?
Yeah.
And then once they say it, then can you walk me through how we might kind of get this back on track?
Absolutely. Or maybe there was something wrong with the budget itself as well. That could be another thing, right? And this really does help you understand that if that's the case, but absolutely helps you understand why you're over budget and can lead to innovation, creative solutions to actually getting back on track. So yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Quiet group this morning.
Sorry, I
Yes, go ahead.
do have an input.
Yep.
I think what usually works for me is also questions like where I am basically describing or being a little bit vulnerable about the background that is being asked. So, like yesterday, I had a conversation with one of my recruiters, and they were not understanding why there's less load these days. There's not many job orders, and where the company is going. So this was the context that I perceived that they might have. So when I asked their cooperation, I was kind of a little bit vulnerable and described a bit of a context, and then asked for their help in cooperating with something. So they themselves commented that, oh, now we know why this is happening. And so I don't remember the exact question, but I think the concept I remember is that opening up to them I mean, not entirely vulnerable in a sense that, world is dying, but just a little bit of um, opening up, coming to their level and saying like we are in this together. Sorry about the a long answer, but
No, it's good.
that has worked for me in past when people understand the context a bit better.
And you know that it's really important too when you think about being a little bit vulnerable as a leader. It's a great skill to have. I mean, even as I believe it was Danny was saying about a budget and being honest about the cost of something can really help people understand where you're coming through or coming from when you're asking these types of questions. So the vulnerability, the providing some information before asking a question can be very, very valuable in getting input that is definitely going to be more helpful for you. Let's see, I'm just checking the chat. Tell me more about your perspective on this. Absolutely. That's a great one too, Patricia. It really does help you understand with where are they coming from, right? Again, we will make assumptions and assume what people are thinking or why they did something some way, but may not be the case, right? All right, good stuff. Let's talk about having some better conversations. I want you to think about this honestly. You don't have to share, but think about it honestly for yourself. How often do your team conversations lead to understanding rather than someone being defensive, frustrated, confused, or maybe even not doing exactly what you had hoped for, or even where they get super quiet? People who do get super quiet, there usually is a hesitation somewhere. It could be that they just don't understand and they're afraid to say something. So think about that just for a moment. So curiosity sets a collaborative, positive tone for interactions in all sizes of teams. If we think about somebody who is frustrated or confused, how can curiosity set a collaborative, positive tone? Again, someone can raise their hand. You can put it in the chat, even if it's a word or two, that's fine too.
Um,
Mhm.
I do have a common scenario that curiosity works.
Mhm.
For us, for example, like me, I'm in recruitment industry, and we basically have job orders, and we are trying to find candidates matching with it. And sometimes the common response from recruiters is that we can't find somebody else, and it's just
Right.
like a plain answer. And it's basically usually I've seen some of the leaders who directly manage them is they just pound hard on them is that I want the candidates, customer is waiting, and just I don't know what you do, but I need 3 solid candidates by tomorrow. And
Mhm.
then my approach and my guidance to both of them is that let's try to break it down and understand why you can't find candidates, and then is it you need more time? Is it it's a hard to find skill set? Using outside the box methodologies, like things like that,
Mhm.
really help out. And sometimes rolling up the sleeves and actually sitting down to put some Boolean searches with them, um, and that recharges them somehow. I think we all go in our viral spiral path down, and we become a victim of our own belief that we can't do something.
Mhm.
So that has helped me having a better conversation, coming to the level where they are and sharing their frustration and finding a way.
Yeah, and it's being very collaborative because if something isn't working and now you're trying to get another 3 people for them, we need to understand what's not working. So really, sitting down and getting that out and asking the questions can really set a much more motivational and collaborative approach to it for sure. I'm just going to check to see if there was anything. Curiosity is fun. Love that, Barbara. Um, it tells them that you value their opinion. 100% does that. Yes. Slows the conversation down to allow for mental processing. And I was going to mention this a little bit later as well, but we all process differently. It doesn't mean that someone who processes information is slow. and someone is quick, it just means we process differently. So good point. Slows the rush to quick judgment and decision-making. Diminishes stress and invites collaboration. We all want less stress. Your employees want less stress. Your vendors want less stress. You want less stress. So absolutely anything we can do to reduce that, right? Good. We need to actively listen. Who knows what it means to actively listen? Anybody? Again, you can just put a couple words if you want, or you can raise your virtual hand and we can take you off mute. But what is active listening? Eye contact, absolutely, it includes that. If we are on our phone and listening to somebody over here, or if we're typing or responding to the dings and everything else, that is not active listening. Paying attention, hear what they say, repeat it back to ensure understanding, 100%. Listening with curiosity and to understand. It's really important that we listen to understand. Body language, yes, absolutely. Summarizing words to confirm understanding, reaffirmations, provide silence. I'm going to come to that one too. Absolutely. Actively listening means you're paying attention to the speaker. You're not asking a question and doing something else. And so many people do it. They'll start typing an email, they'll respond to a ding on the phone, and if it helps, turn all that stuff off. So it's very, very important that if we're going to ask questions, we're actually listening to what the answers are. I also saw another one come up here, making sure you're understood by repeating what you heard. Yes, absolutely. Assumptions. We have to avoid assumptions. And you know what? We're human. We do it all the time. We make assumptions. Our brain wants to make assumptions. It wants to protect us. And this could be anything from something in business to staying inside when it's thunderstorming outside. We make the assumption we could get hit by lightning, so we stay inside. Assumptions can cause conflict. Why is that? Avoid thinking about our response while the other person is speaking. You could get it wrong. Absolutely, you could get it wrong. Putting words into other people's mouths. Yes, yes. Good answers. Good answers. Assumptions are something that we're creating in our mind. We may assume that Tara's always late for meetings because she's lazy. Maybe Tara's always late for meetings because you've scheduled her with a client meeting right before and she can't make yours in time because of it. But we've made the assumption that she's lazy. So it can absolutely cause conflict. And this could be also where you're feeling frustration or defensiveness from employees, but it could also create conflict among people if you do have a group of employees or even contractors that are working for you. We need to invite solutions. Feedback is the key to creativity and innovation, and even understanding that maybe whatever our directive is isn't always the best way. We want feedback. We also want feedback on how we're doing as a leader, but feedback when we have a problem or a challenge, and even brainstorming or doing a round robin, which I'll talk about in a minute, can be very, 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 very important, and also invite solutions. We also want to set a great lead by example positive tone because we're the business owner or we're the leader. Being curious will naturally reduce defensiveness because we're not always just dictating, go do this, go do that. We're actually starting to build trust because people feel that value, that heard, that psychological safety. And we want trust because when we have trust, people will share things that they see with us, and maybe it's a safety issue that they see. I want you to consider how this can all help you with that next difficult conversation if you are being the lead by example, positive, curious tone. All right. Now we want to talk about how can we understand our team. Your team, again, could be, it's not just directs, it's not just your employees, it could be contractors, it could be vendors, it could be whomever you're dealing with. You can practice skills to enhance the understanding. So paraphrase and summarize. Somebody had mentioned summarize earlier. Repeating back what you heard in your own words ensures clarity and understanding. You might say something like, so what I'm hearing you say is X, Y, Z. Is that correct? Am I understanding you correctly? A lot of times you're going to end up hearing that you didn't quite understand it the way they hoped it come across. And it's sometimes then when you're leading by example, this can come back at you. If an employee says, so what I'm hearing you ask me to do is ABC, is that correct? don't get defensive. It's not an offense. They're just copying what you're doing in a way that they can make sure they're understanding and they're clear on what you're asking them to do. Emotions and tone. We are human beings and we are emotional. It really is, it's there. We can't deny that. We need to pay attention to not only what is said, but also how it is said. And active listening comes in here too. And when we are actively listening, we're also paying attention to what people are doing, the body language. If someone's always looking down, if someone's shaking their head, rolling their eyes, right? There's an emotion going on there. We can respond with empathy if we need to, if those emotions do come up. So if someone's looking frustrated, angry, or sad, or something like that, you can say, I can tell this is important to you, or I can see that this change that we're going to be doing is bothering you. Let's talk through that together. Tell me more about that. It really can help you with understanding any roadblocks, barriers, or shifts in thinking that may need to happen for your team. And it can really help talking through it together. Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that in a particular person and situation where someone's, clearly unhappy with the situation, but I wonder about timing. Like, is that the moment to really dig in and pry to like find out what the reaction is about, or is there an acceptable, like, sort of like, I can see that this is bothering you and I'd love to understand more about that. Do you need a minute to process things, and can we circle back to this in 5-10 minutes and continue the conversation or something like that?
Excellent loaded question. So it depends on how they are reacting. If they're crying really hard, you need to give them that space. If they're yelling and screaming, you need to ask them to calm down and take a moment, go for a walk, right? If it is something that you can deal with in the moment, if they're just like rolling eyes, then you could just say, I can tell that this is bothering you. Let me understand that a little bit better. So it really depends on what emotion they're showing you and how emotional they are. What is key here is we do not want to wait too long to deal with any emotion. So give them a break, give them time to walk, give them time to cry if they need to, whatever that might be, but you need to make sure you're not leaving it too long. So let me ask you all this. If we leave it too long to ask what is going on or why their reaction was like that, what happens? What do we lose? Trust. Absolutely, Helga, big time. You lose trust if you wait too long. It also tells everybody else that the behavior was okay if someone's yelling, for example. What we want to make sure we do is keep the trust there. So even if they're frustrated with you, talking through it together builds a collaborative tone, and we're wanting to understand them. They're valued, they're heard, and they're seen. So you cannot leave it too long. Again, it's a loaded question to tell you what that looks like. It really does depend about what we're talking. I've had some very difficult situations where I've said, let's talk about this tomorrow so you can have time to calm down. So it really does depend, but don't leave it too long because you will lose that trust. Yes, Danny, go ahead.
I when you were, so I was imagining a one-on-one conversation when I asked my original question, and when you replied, I was imagining a group situation.
Could be either or.
So sort of you recommend getting to the bottom of why somebody's reacting by rolling their eyes or whatever in a group environment.
So again, loaded, but yeah, I would suggest trying to do this one-on-one, especially if you know they're going to be defensive and it's going to ruin the rest of your meeting. I was once able to say, hey, Danny, I noticed that maybe you're a little bit off with this conversation. Why don't you give us your feedback? But I knew that person would be comfortable with it. So you do have to know your audience in that case. You do have to know who you're talking to. Sometimes it's best just to wait until you can have that one-on-one conversation because they may not be comfortable and you want to keep that trust. Does that help answer that?
Yeah, that's what I was like. I have never called somebody's facial expressions or body language out in a group setting that I was like, oh no, have I been doing this wrong? Am I supposed to address it in the moment?
No, if it is somebody that is strong, you know it's okay, you know, stuff like that, one thing. But most people, you need to do it afterwards, not necessarily in front of an audience. But you can do
Yeah.
this afterwards. You could say, I noticed that you were rolling your eyes, or I noticed that you were getting really reactive. However, if they're disrupting the meeting, you may have to also ask them, you know, to kindly step out so that you can talk through it together afterwards. You know, you may have to address it then in a different way, which is a different conversation. But yes, most times it would likely be one-on-one unless it's disruptive.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. Just seeing, Patricia said, I like that a time was set for regrouping rather than simply saying later. Yes, absolutely. All right, we can ask clarifying questions. So we use this to dig deeper without leading an answer. So this could be, your solution sounds interesting. Can you tell me more? Can you provide me more information? Can you tell me how you think this might work? Can you tell me how this might look like if it was successful? This is especially important if you think you have the best idea, but now you're like, I wonder if maybe theirs is better. But also if they're challenging an idea that you have, you can absolutely, you know, talk through what theirs is. And why is this so important in tiny teams? If you have a team of one person to say 10 people, why is this really, really important that we're talking through somebody else's solutions? Making the most of your talent. Yes, absolutely. We're also very diverse, aren't we? So just because somebody works on your shop floor does not mean that they don't know somebody. Maybe we're talking about sales, that they don't know somebody in sales, that they haven't worked in a company before where they were, you know, asked for clarity around sales. Your employees are your public relations. Remember that. So I'm just looking at Carly's here. So you can get support as a leader and owner too. Yes, we need that. When we can get into tunnel vision as a business owner or leader, because we can be so overwhelmed, especially if we're in a very small team. So really trying to get that sounding board out there, get different ideas, get support in different ways, 100%. We also want to pause and reflect. So I can't remember who it was, but someone said the awkward silence. So this is where awkward silence can come in. We don't want to react too quickly to people. We want to give yourself and your team space to respond. And sometimes that awkward silence that we all hate actually allows you or the team members to process their thoughts. Again, some of us process differently. We may have to think about the information you just shared, where other people may know the information you just shared. So before responding right away, and responding is not interrupting. The second you interrupt somebody, you're not actively listening. But if we give space before, just, you know, awkward silence is weird, but give a few seconds, just count to 6 before replying to somebody, just to allow them to provide some information to your question. Okay. So just use the number 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one of these do you need to do more of? Just place that in the chat. And we all can improve, by the way. 4, 1, 4. 4 is a tough one, isn't it? It's natural for us to just want to just say something. 1, good. Yes, summarizing is important. It's tough too. Good stuff. 4. It looks like 4 and 1 are the main ones here. So we all have something we can work on, don't we? Excellent. Thank you for participating. So remember that you want to first focus on understanding and responding second. That is the biggest thing. We want to not have miscommunication, frustration, etc. We want to be able to understand before we respond. Always remember that. Collaboration. Don't know, there's a drawing on here. Don't know how that happened. Wasn't me. So I'm going to ignore the red lines. Collaboration starts with you. If your team mirrored your new updated approach to curiosity this week, and they started asking questions, what could you achieve together? Think about that for a moment. You could have multiple solutions to challenges, right? More meetings. No, Danny, we don't want more meetings. No more meetings. We could meet milestones and faster and more efficiently too, right? Absolutely. Okay. You are the leader and you're the business owner or your behavior sets a standard for the culture that you're going to have. Employees will take cues from you. Even consultants and your contractors may take cues from what you do, including vendors too, by the way. It's not just what people say. And this is really, really important in smaller teams, that you're setting a positive example and you're leading by the example you want others to do. So if you're approaching curiosity, we want them to approach curiosity. You're going to model curiosity in every interaction and when you remember to do it. And that means asking questions. That means listening actively and showing genuine interest in what people have to say. And yes, Tricia, it does lessen that pressure from the leader as well, right? You don't have to make all the decisions and you don't need to make all the decisions. You might be the final decision maker, but some of those solutions can come in too. But some of those decisions you can just now give to your team because you believe in them, you trust them, and they will ask you if there's a question. And it encourages initiative. Absolutely. Again, apologize for the red lines. I don't know if you guys can see that. Don't know where it came from. Encourage input, even when it challenges you. If your employees and people feel comfortable challenging you, that actually can build trust and builds ownership as well, because now they're going to start to believe in something. They'll take the ownership around it, but they'll also start to own their work. They'll do more for you because we're able to challenge each other. A challenge is good for us as leaders, especially in small teams where we could have more tunnel vision, so to speak, because we don't have enough challenge around us. So this really does help. It's extremely helpful for you. And the ripple effect. Ripple effect, if you do it, they'll follow. Curious leaders create teams and they're more engaged, they're more proactive, they're willing to collaborate, they share their ideas because there's no fear that you're going to say, no, that's not right, or reprimand because they mentioned something to you. There's less finger pointing. And even they don't believe now that their idea isn't important or that they're not a good enough person because we're actually willing to accept them. What we need to do though is appreciate when they do give us those ideas and when they do trust us. How to create collaboration. During a team meeting, a round robin or a brainstorm, those types of things, gives everyone a chance to speak in meetings or check-ins. A round robin is basically all of us are in a meeting and I ask a question. Hey, everybody, our sales have stalled and we need to increase sales. I'm curious what you all think might work. Harley, let's start with you. Do you have any thoughts? Alex, what about you? Jordan? Going around and around robin. Now, some people are going to be more introverted and not be comfortable sharing. That's okay. Let them say pass. What you can do afterwards is go to them and say, I'm curious, did you have any input? I noticed that you said pass, but I'm wondering if you've had time to think about it. Again, they feel valued and heard. You're asking for that collaboration and you're being curious about them. Oh, Helga, yes, go ahead.
I just had a question. I do try to employ a fair number of those techniques, but I find it incredibly time consuming. And as an owner and founder of a business with 15 people, I find to get my work done, I almost have to hide from the office so I don't get engaged in those conversations all day long. How do you sift through what the important ones are and the ones that aren't so important? I have to err. I find that difficult making that
Yeah.
call. And then I find at the end of the day I don't get my work done and I'm doing my work at night.
When you start to build this type of culture, so to speak, you actually get less questions. People don't come to you so much because you're trusting them and they're trusting you, right? So at the
Okay.
beginning, you can start small. I'm going to give some examples of how to start small, so that you're not wasting time. Because the last thing I want anybody to do is add more time, and waste more time.
Mm-hmm.
So you could start, if you are having a sales challenge, let's just say, and you do a quick round robin, stick to, if you create a half-hour meeting, it doesn't go past a half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big problem business owners and leaders have, is allowing meetings to go beyond the time that was allotted.
I
You could
find
just
the
go ahead.
approachability too, like, so if you have that kind of open door policy and trusting safe environment where people can talk to you, they do.
Yes.
And I guess I'm just looking for tips on how to manage the time demands of all this kind of collaboration and engagement because I love it and I think it's about emotional intelligence and getting the best out of your
Mhm.
people and your team, and I actually genuinely love talking to my staff and asking questions, but I just find the time management piece for me is very challenging.
I mean, I've done things such as do not disturb time for myself. So, maybe it's a focused hour where you tell everybody you're not available. You could
Mhm.
have hours when you are, 100% available. So, from 9 to 10 in the morning, let me know how it's going, ask me some
Mhm.
questions, those types of things. You put time limits around things. If you're having a one-on-one meeting, or,
Mhm.
you don't have a lot of time that day, you ask one question and move on,
Yeah.
right? These are simple things that can help until people
Yeah.
get used to it.
That makes
And I'll share a
sense.
couple of those tips.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Like, I
You're
don't know if
welcome.
I was
Yeah.
getting off topic there, but it was something
Yeah, it's fine.
I think it's all so great, but I just find creating this environment, it really speaks to the kind of culture I appreciate and try to foster here. But
Hmm.
we do read a lot of long scientific reports, we write them, and it requires
Hmm.
not just an hour, it requires sometimes 3, 4 hours of
Yeah.
concentrated time.
Allowing people to know when you are available, even if it is a half an hour a day, can be helpful.
Yeah.
I also do training on time and energy management, so it's a big topic, that
Mhm.
I can go into, but not for today, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, we can certainly reach out later. Shared problem solving does frame challenges as, let's solve this together, rather than that top-down directive, right? And again, this can actually, going to your point, is save time too, because now everybody's coming up with something together and now we can delegate the work out. Invite ideas and experimentation. And yes, you need to take risks, especially if you're a small business. And so you could ask something like, what's one way that we could try to do this differently? Especially things, and I use sales as an example because it affects all of us. So if sales are stagnant or falling, just asking what's one way that we could try to do sales differently could actually invite ideas. And if you don't have time, you could just, hey, everybody, I'm going to leave this question with you. Let's get back in your one-on-ones this week. Let's get back when we have our group meeting, whatever that looks like. They have time to process it as well. And a quick huddle, a lot of people do that 10, 15-minute huddle every morning. This really can help with clarifying priorities. And if somebody has a quick question around the priorities, or you have a question, if there's any roadblock around priorities, that quick 5, 10-minute huddle can actually do that and reduce the communication at the same time. Okay, I'm just looking at some of the comments here so I don't miss anything. Scheduling a specific time of day. Yes, when you're not available, that is absolutely a great idea. Focus time. A lot of my clients use the word focus time. I call it D&D time, or do not disturb. Deep work performance time. Yeah, excellent. You also want to acknowledge any contributions and celebrate the ideas and feedback. That reinforces trust. It reinforces engagement. It reinforces the fact that you believe in them. I mean, you hired them, they're there for a reason. And so it helps them also feel valued, seen, and heard. So again, if they're good employees, you're not having any other kind of issues with them, let's celebrate them. So going to the point of making it, starting small and helping you get this as a going forward thing. Even if you're already doing some of this, there's maybe some tips and tricks here. What if you just ask one thoughtful question to each team member this week? If you have 5 team members, one a day, and it's one question, right? So what are some examples that you could ask in the morning, let's say, to each team member that is a thoughtful question, but simple and can also help you on the timeline thing. Anybody have any ideas or questions that you might ask?
I'll go. I'm
Sure.
having some issues where like all of our projects are over budget.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe asking the delivery team it or like one perhaps one team member per project. What are some ways that you think we might be able to get this project a little bit more on track?
Mm-hmm. It's inviting that thoughtfulness, that those ideas and that creativity as well, right?
Hmm.
And if you don't have time, you don't have to discuss it further. You can say, great, those are great examples. Let me think about that. And then we can come together when you have time, right? Good. That's good. Anybody else? What are you looking forward to this week? Excellent question. That also helps us understand what motivates them. And that's another great question. What motivates you to come to work every day? Those types of things help us with keeping people motivated because now we know what they're looking forward to. We know what they're happy about. We know why they come to work every day. If you do ask that what keeps you motivated question, I always add in, except, besides money or beside benefits or something that they always give that answer to, right? Yeah, fun questions are good too. Even, what was one win from last week? Motivation, right?
Sometimes if people are really busy, I'll ask if they need any help prioritizing their tasks.
Yes. If you have an employee that is really struggling with being busy or they're not getting their work done on time or they're
Hmm.
just, absolutely fantastic question.
Or another one I often use
Mhm.
is, are you having any roadblocks right now that I can help with?
Yes, 100%. Roadblocks and challenges are something people don't always share with you unless you ask
Hmm.
because they feel that they should know better. They feel
Yeah.
guilty for asking. Yeah, so
And then I
excellent
offer the
questions.
help right away, like
Hmm.
unequivocally.
Yep. One thing I caution around offering help is don't do their work for them.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying you do, I'm just in general. A lot of people will say, let
Yeah.
me just take that from you, or let me take that challenge away.
Yeah.
We want them to learn and grow. We want them to
Yeah.
do it for us, right? So, yeah, but
Yeah.
excellent questions. Excellent questions. So, here's a couple trips for you. Choose open and meaningful questions that mean something to each person. If you know that I'm highly motivated, asking me what motivates me may not be the best question for me, but maybe asking me a question, such as I think it was Danny who was mentioning about budgets, might be more valuable to me. You could also say what's something that's slowing you down this week. That could be, well, I'm waiting for you to approve XYZ, right? Be consistent with asking questions because it does build trust. We don't want to ask questions this week because Tara says start small and then we never ask again. That doesn't build trust. It needs to be a habit. And this doesn't mean that you have to ask, what motivates you every week. It just means being more curious throughout your day, throughout your week with employees. Yes, that's a good one too, Patricia. What would be a win for you today or on this project? Those types of things. Never dismiss somebody's answer, even if you don't like it, depending on what you're asking them. Appreciate it. If it won't work, you need to explain the why or why not. Why really does matter. Anybody want to hazard a guess why matters so much, or the why or the why not behind something?
I mean, why knowing why you're doing something, I don't know how to explain why it's important, but I remember I dropped out of math 12 with 100% because I didn't understand the real world applications of what I
Mm-hmm.
was learning. And had I been given an understanding of why math 12 can help you in your future, I might have stuck to it. It's motivating, I guess.
Motivating, absolutely motivating, and understanding, which you mentioned as well. And Savannah, yes, it drives purpose, right? We now know a purpose behind something or why we can't do something, even if it's a great idea and budget doesn't allow for it. The why not is, well, you know what? It doesn't fit into our financials this year, but let me think how we could fit that into next year, right? Tracking responses among team members. Now, if you have a very small team, you may not have to track responses. If you decide that you're going to ask all your employees what motivates them to come to work, and you only have 6 employees, you don't need to track that. You can track it up in your head, right? But if you have a very large organization, then sometimes people do track it. Knowing the answers among team members is really, really important because we can then look for trends. Maybe it's something with us, maybe it's something with a customer, maybe a vendor is being a problem. We can really start to understand what some of the commonalities are so we can attack those rather than the odd things if it is a trend. All right, so one-on-one check-ins. If you're not doing this, it's a new habit for you. And I think Carly will also be sending you a worksheet I have on one-on-one check-ins. They're really important to have one-on-one check-ins with your team members. And the reason behind this is because we can find out what motivates them. We can find out what their challenges are. We can find out, how their weekend was if we want to learn a little bit more personally. One-on-one check-ins do not need to be long. Mine used to be 20 minutes to half an hour, depending on whom I was speaking to, if it was a manager or not. But they are very, very important because we can learn so much. So making sure you're asking some of those curious questions, limit the time. Don't go over time unless you absolutely have to and you both agree to it. The conversation do have key habits that we need to develop. So we need to keep them focused. We're there to learn, to understand, to reflect, gain feedback even, ensure they have support. This is not just how are you doing with X, Y, Z on your task list. Use your one-on-one check-ins to talk about goals, career aspirations. That doesn't have to be daily or weekly, by the way, that could be quarterly. And then also looking at reflections, challenges for the week, those types of things. And you could use curiosity-driven prompts, such as what's working well for you this week? What's getting in your way this week? Or how can I help you succeed? All of these things can be really curious-driven. They're telling you some information you need that week. And that working well is always a win, and that motivates people. Listen actively, pause the awkward silence we all hate, and give your team members space to share without interrupting. Remember, the second you interrupt, you're not actually listening. Let them finish talking. Reflect back what you hear when you need to. Follow up on those past conversations as well to show that their ideas or concerns matter. And this could be saying, last week you mentioned that the vendor wasn't getting back to you and that was stopping you. How did that follow-up go with them? Okay. And end with next steps that you agree to together. You want to agree to these things. You're working to co-create solutions. You're also working to clarify expectations if there's confusion. And you're confirming what supports they may need before leaving the conversation. And again, support doesn't mean you're doing the work. It means you're providing the resources they need in order to get it done. So building some team habits here. Here's a few challenges I have for you this week. If you can't do them all this week, that's okay. Just take one at a time. Start your next team meeting with a curious question without putting your ideas or assumptions first. Just be curious. So it could be, what is one improvement we could make this week to be more efficient, collaborative, finish this project, stay under budget, whatever fits. What you don't want to do is, my idea is this, but what do you guys think could be other ideas? Second, we put our idea in there, people will stop sharing because they will think yours is going to be the best and the one you're going to pick. So don't share yours until everybody else is done. Use the round robin, brain dump, brainstorm, whatever you want to call it, approach to a question as well, just to ensure that everybody has time to contribute. It's their ideas, their thoughts, concerns, without fear and no judgment when we're doing this. We want to foster that idea that we believe in them, we trust them, we want them to grow, we want their ideas and that they're valued. The second we judge or allow judgment to happen, that will go away for that person. So no fear, no judgment. Let's just see if we can come up with some ideas. And acknowledging wins from the week or any ideas that are implemented. And then the lessons learned as well. When we look at mistakes and failures as dwelling on them, you did this didn't work, but we don't look at it as a way forward, we don't learn from those things, then we're not actually going to grow. We're not going to be innovative. We want to know why things aren't working so we can learn from them and create ways forward. Brainstorming can be great for that. And you can also complete a leadership reflection at the end of the week. Again, doesn't need to be long. It could be 15 minutes. Review what went really well for you and your team or your business. Has the team changed even slightly based on you being a little bit more curious? And what do you need to do better next week? Or what is that open question you're going to ask next week? There's a lot of different ways that you can use a small reflection based on making some small curiosity changes that can help you with growing into next week or the next month. So conversations, understanding, and collaboration, and we want to put it in action. Starts with you. As I mentioned before, you have to lead by example. You want to ask first. Move from being direct or telling to exploring and seeking to understand. Reduce conflict. Remember, understanding and empathy can really drive engagement, trust, and collaboration. Collaboration will grow. When you model curiosity and collaboration, your team will start to contribute their ideas and solutions. If trust is lacking right now, it will take time. Don't give up because it doesn't work tomorrow. People, trust is earned. So if they're a brand new employee or there's been an issue in the past, it will take time for that to build. You do need to make it a habit. You need to be consistent in being curious by having those focused one-on-one conversations, whether they be weekly or monthly, and update team practices, processes, procedures so that you can learn, grow, take action, and develop as a team and as a business. So I want you to think about this question. Think about what one leadership takeaway or action you will take away from today and apply next week. And if you didn't do the pre-work, maybe that's where you start. Maybe it's starting by asking everybody a simple, open question. So before we get to any questions, just some more information for you. I hope you found valuable and was information. If you knew it, great. Hopefully it was a great reminder. And if you didn't, now you have some tools. Carly will also be sending out a one-on-one meeting guide should you be needing some assistance there. I also have a question guide that she will hand out, which is about 20 great key questions to ask when building teams. Through Balance's fee for service consulting service, I do offer leadership training and coaching that we can bring to your teams if needed. And I also have an Amplifying Leadership Circle community where I have lots of bite-sized training. I'm talking 5-minute videos that you can do on your own time, posts, tools, and a lot of other things there. You can find information on that at amplifyingleadership.ca/community-info. There's a 14-day free trial for both our core and our premium inner circle levels. You can check it out without even worrying about a credit card. And if it's something that you would love to continue with, I have a code for 25% off for 3 months, which is LEAD25. All right. Is there any questions? I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see everybody now. All right. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand. Yes, Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that we want to use open questions when we're doing performance management as well. Mm-hmm. So you have a problem situation or a problem employee, and you're trying to get to the bottom of why. Mm-hmm. And I guess I wonder how to know when it's hopeless and you've got to get rid of the person.
Generally, you'll get a sense of they're not willing to input, and you're building that trust and you're trying to build that collaboration. And maybe you're doing a performance improvement plan, or you're doing, a disciplinary thing, and being curious, asking them what their solutions is really important before providing your own in a performance improvement plan or disciplinary meeting. It really does allow them to make up their own solutions and own it. If they're not willing to do that, if they're not understanding and you've done everything, you've asked all these questions, it's still not working, then that's a different conversation. That could be that they're not a fit and those types of things, which you would need to discuss further. Sometimes that's just going to be what it is. They're not going to be a fit. They don't appreciate that culture. But those people also won't give us the information that we may need. They may do things that maybe they don't understand correctly. Sometimes they're perfectly fine employees too. So that's a further in-depth conversation. But in general, ask the questions, have them come up with their own solutions for disciplinary things. And if that doesn't work and they're not hearing you, then that might be a different conversation. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Of course. I'm just going to check the chat here. You would like to use it for your 21C? And then Patricia, how did the follow-up go rather than did you follow up? Yes. How did the follow-up go? So if you're talking to an employee, if you're talking to a vendor, if you're talking to a contractor and you're asking your team member, how did it go? You could ask that. Exactly. It's a nice open question because the did you follow up is a closed question. Did you all follow up? No. Or did you follow up? Yes. It doesn't tell me anything, right? Good. Any other questions?
I have found that I have a couple of remote employees, and one of which is someone that provide is someone somewhat challenging from time to time. Um, I just wondered if you others find that that's more difficult to manage remotely. It's hard to
Always.
create culture remotely, and I seem to have more problems with the remote ones.
And they need to feel more valued than people that are in-house. Because in-house, people feel valued all the time, right? So you could really use some of these questions and make sure you're doing one-on-one meetings with your remote folks. And that might be your remote people get it once a week instead of once a month, if that's the cadence you're currently using. They need to feel valued. I used to work in an organization where we were in Ontario as the head office, but all my salespeople were across Canada. And so once a week, we had a group sales call with other people, like someone, the head of customer service, my head of purchasing, and my head of warehouse, and myself would come together and we would talk. So they felt valued. They felt heard because their voices need heard. Remote people need to feel they're part of your team. Still, I think.
Great presentation, Tara. Just really enjoyed it, learned a lot. And just a comment, really, and I'll be presenting in about a half an hour on writing proposals. And one of the things I normally have in my presentation, but I don't have it in today, is never miss an opportunity to say thank you. And it's just a really good credo or motto, and it works with everyone, right? Like whether it's your staff, your clients, your funders, like just you remember, right? Don't forget that. So I just wanted to make that comment and just to say, like, just such a great presentation. I learned a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will say praise works for vendors great as well. If you have a vendor and you start praising them, I'll tell you, negotiations get easier when you want to make negotiations. If you have great relationships with vendors, a simple thank you, a simple I appreciate it, it goes a long way. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating. Greatly appreciate you. And I'll send it back off to Carly.
Thanks, Tara, so much for taking us through that. As you're going through the presentation, I was thinking I need to work on my own summarization, pausing for silence practices and putting that into my own day-to-day work. So thank you very much for taking us through that. As I said, there was a question in the chat. I just wanted to repeat that, yes, everyone will get a copy of Tara's slides as well as resources that she had mentioned and a link to this recording once we have finished editing it. So don't worry, we've got lots of information coming your way. So this takes us to our kind of next agenda item, which is a bit of a break, a bit of a pause for you all. I know this is a longer education session and appreciate everyone joining us for the whole time if you can. So we will pause now for roughly like a 15-ish minute break. So I'm going to put some slides up and some music with like a little bit of a timer just in case people are joining us midway as well. So please feel free to turn your camera off, grab a coffee or a water, check some emails, but maybe not too many emails, and we will return at 12:40, so 12:40 Eastern time for you all to come back. So I will see you all in roughly 15 or so minutes and take that break now. So thank you so much. See you in a bit, folks. For those who may be joining us after the break, hello. Please continue to keep yourself on mute unless you have a question. Cameras on are great, but again, optional. So a couple more pieces for me to talk about next steps before I turn it over to our next facilitator. So this Rhyze Up education event is just one way that we stay connected to our program alumni. For those who are just finishing with the program right now, if you haven't already received, you will get a project outcomes report with tailored recommendations that outline some possible next steps for you, as well as an evaluation call with myself to help kind of gather some feedback and to go through those recommendations. Also, keep an eye out in your email for a survey link to complete post-program that helps us capture a snapshot of where your business was at the start and now as you finish your program completion. It's a brief survey, about 5 or so minutes. For everyone else on the call, I'll encourage you to stay up to date with our Boundless newsletter and social media accounts for new programs and offerings. Jordan will post our newsletter link if you are not currently signed up for our newsletter. So there are a couple programs and services that I'd like to talk about with you all, open to anyone on this call that you might be interested in. One of the resources that we offer here at Boundless is our business consulting services. This is customized support from our experienced executive level mentors. We have over 30 on our roster. They can be short-term projects or ongoing monthly or weekly engagements, however you would like to set it up. This is open to any company in Canada, do not have to be in Ontario, don't have to be incorporated, any sector, and available at any time. So people can contact us and find out more information, and we can walk you through other options to support your company. We also have 2 programs at Boundless that I wanted to mention. One of our programs is called the Business Impact Program. This is for Ontario-based companies who are under $1 million in revenue. It provides companies with access to events, resources, monthly calls, educational sessions, networking, and more. Begins with a 15-hour diagnostic to kind of overview your challenges and your goals, and then continues with monthly mentorship for up to 3 hours per month. It's a 2-year fully funded program. Intake is quarterly, and the next open intake is going to be March 1st. So you can find that application on our website. Another program that I'll quickly go through as well that is new to us is called the Sustainable Impact Program. This is again for companies located in Ontario, headquartered in Southern Ontario, generating a minimum of $200,000 in annual revenue. Program aims to prepare high potential scale-ups to compete for global markets and investments. And it does that through strategic guidance, target problem solving, and expert-led workshops on export and investor readiness, as well as pitch coaching. So information sessions and the website will be coming in April for those who wish to learn more. Other resources that I would like to highlight for you today. On our website, boundlessaccelerator.ca/PERC we have a whole list of discounts, information, connections that is available for current Boundless programs as well as alumni. So discounts to supplier diversity councils, things like IT help, influencer leads, full service marketing, and more. You can take a look at that PERC partner page and put in the contact information if you're interested in learning more. These slides and these resources, again, will be shared with you after all calls, so you can click on the link once you receive the slides. We also have a BA client directory, so you can list your company's products and services on our website for free, so promotion for you. And the other piece I'd like to mention, if you are a women-led company, 50% or more, we also have a current partnership with NVenture. to help give women companies access to capital faster by providing flexible term sheets to high potential pre-qualified companies, normally in amounts ranging from $25,000 to $50,000. If you'd like to learn more about any of those pieces, happy to have a conversation with you after today's session. Which leads us to our next educational session, writing winning grants and proposal. When I reviewed themes and pain points from current participants, funding was a clear recurring concern. Whether you're applying for grants, bidding for proposals, or writing to be a part of other programs, it is key to understand how to present yourself and your company. I'd like to introduce you to our next facilitator, Barbara Robinson. Barbara Robinson founded River Road Creative in 2005. Barbara is a communications professional with 25 years experience leading campaigns and developing marketing products for the public and private sectors. A specialist in the field of environmental conservation and sustainability, she has also worked extensively with small businesses and startups in a variety of sectors to empower them with the skills and tools needed to not only effectively tell their stories, but also to get funding. Barbara is passionate about delivering powerful communications, including strategies, branding, graphic design, writing, and public relations that get attention and produce results. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and the floor is yours, Barbara.
Thank you, Carly and Jordan, and hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm just going to share my screen and get started. Let me know if you can...
We can see your slides. You can just click present. Perfect.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed the Tara's presentation this morning as well. I hope all of you got to see it or that you watched the replay, because I think it really connects with what I'm about to present. So I'm presenting writing winning grants and proposals, as Carly said. I've got, as Carly said, about 25 years experience writing proposals and grants, and also in the fundraising sector in general. Written hundreds of proposals and grants, and generated about 2 million in funding from grants, more from proposals, which isn't like a whole, like we look at a hospital foundation, they'll be bringing in 100 million, but small scale. This is what I do. So today, we're going to talk about the fundraising cycle. We're going to talk about RFPs and grants and quick assessment. We're going to look at how we would fill out a proposal just generally if there was a funding or a project need. We'll get into a little bit about writing, and I'll give you some takeaways, and then we can have a discussion. I'm open to questions throughout. If you want to raise your hand, I might not see your hand up. So if Carly or Jordan can let me know. Sometimes I think it's easier during a presentation to ask the question at the time, because sometimes we forget or it just feels out of context, but whatever you like. So I'm going to start with the polls. So the first poll question is, have you ever applied for grant funding? Just to get a sense of the level of experience here. So it looks like about 6 out of 8 people have, but we're getting more people in now. So it gives me a general idea. 60% have applied, 60 to 70%, and the rest haven't. So the next question, if you did apply for a grant, were you, or for funding, were you successful? Oh, okay, that no went really dark. Okay, good. So mostly of the ones that did, yes, they were successful. Okay, good. Okay, it's about the same for, looks like those who applied for it did get the grants. Now, the other question is, have you ever submitted a proposal in response to a request for a proposal or for a product or service? And just to I should probably make it clear the difference in case there's anyone who doesn't know. So a grant is basically an opportunity where you're going to get funding for a project that you're working on. Oftentimes they're government grants, or through foundations. So that's what the grant is. And the request for proposal is typically for a product or service. So let's say the government will put out a request for a proposal because they want someone to do a writing job or put together a report, or maybe they want a product. They want t-shirts or for an event or something like that. So then you would put in a proposal for that. So basically you're doing work and getting paid for that work. So it looks about 50-50 submitted a proposal. Okay, that's good to know. And then let's find out about the success of these. Were you successful? Okay, so good success rate, actually. The no is going up a little bit, but it's good to see that. It helps me when I do this presentation. This presentation is it's not going to be as interactive as Tara's was. There's a lot of information to relay, but again, as I said, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. So the fundraising cycle I see, and this is primarily for grants, but it's also for requests for proposal. So I see it in 4 parts. One is setting up for success or finding funding, which for a request for a proposal would be finding, a work opportunity or an opportunity to bid to sell your product. The next step is writing it. And the third step is working that investment. So whether it's working with a funder, let's say the Trillium Foundation, to make sure that you complete the project. And the fourth step is stewardship. But stewardship is actually the entire process. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through it. Stewardship on these projects and in the fundraising cycle is, I would say, the most important factor. So I'll talk more about that. Today we're going to talk about proposal writing, which is also like pitching. And one of the things I love about the proposal writing and the pitching is that it's really sales. And I come from a background of sales, and I love sales. Like, I love finding the fits that work. So funding sources, just going to touch briefly on this. Where do you get funding? It's often specific issue funding. So Agriculture Canada has funding, Innovation Technology has funding. I look at who is funding other organizations or companies that are similar to mine. That gives me some clues. Federal, provincial, regional, municipal grants, investor funding, community foundations. I've got Grey Bruce in there. It's a foundation that gives a lot of money to the Grey Bruce area. And then for requests for proposals, it's business sites, government bidding sites. And I'm going to provide you with a guide after this is over that will be sent out. And Carly and I have identified some sources for funding and opportunities in that guide. So I'm not really going to have time to get into it today. So the most important thing, in my view, when you come across a grant or a request for proposal, I'm going to call it an RFP for the rest of this presentation, just because it's easier. So the first thing you want to look at is what you want to do is what I call a quick assessment. So you want to look at a deadline. Is there a deadline to apply? And do you have time to put something together? Qualify. Do you meet all of the criteria? And typically it is all of the criteria. It's a very competitive market that we're in, both for grants and for RFPs. So it's typically all of it. is it a good fit? Is the foundation, do you share values? Does it make sense? Would they fund someone like you? Would they hire someone like you? So really looking into that. And then, of course, the value. Is it worth it for me? These proposals and grants, particularly proposals for RFPs, take a lot of time and work. So you want to make sure it's good value for your time. So that's the quick assessment. It's the first step. And then once you do the quick assessment, you're going to look at the grant application in more detail. You're going to read it, basically. You're going to read it, which I know seems kind of an overwhelming thought because some of these are really long, but you're going to read it. You really need to know that to understand it and know it. And then when you finish reading it, you're going to read it again. It's a huge investment in these proposals and grants. It takes company time, it takes energy. So you really want to make sure that all of those things from the quick assessment, and now you've read it and it makes sense. And sometimes, especially with RFPs, there'll be information not in the main criteria. For example, I got caught on one a few months ago, which specified not in the bidding criteria, but in another section of the RFP that it was for Indigenous companies only, and I'm not an Indigenous company, so that ruled me out. So you really want to read that fine print. Okay, any questions or anything so far? All right. So the next thing you're going to do is, or what I'm saying you're going to do it, what I recommend, what I do is to create a checklist of everything you're going to need. And the reason this list is so important is because there are going to be some things that you need to prepare for in advance. For example, reference letters, testimonials. So you may have 3 weeks to complete this grant, which seems like a lot of time until you realize, your key reference who's going to give you a letter is, away for 10 days or something like that. So you want to get that. The advanced preparation really is your first priority. And then you want to set up like a sample criteria of all the pieces that you're going to need, your company profile, what the project is, approach, impact and evaluation, and budget. We'll talk more about this in detail later, but that's a sample criteria, typically the information that you need to provide. If it's an online form, especially for grants, you're going to work offline. So you're going to copy all the questions and you're going to take, some of them say, 500 words or 500 characters. So you're going to take that offline and work on it in some sort of word processing document. So you have full control over it. So you don't have to log in every time. And it'll be easier for others to edit. And the other thing you're going to do is refer to other grants and proposals. So you're going to look at and I guess the idea here is when you're doing this, you want to set up a directory of all this information. It sounds really basic, but you want the link to the original call. You want everything in writing, even if you have to copy it offline because it doesn't always stay online in case they call you in 6 months and say, well, we've got a few questions. We'd like to give you the funding or the job. And you don't have the original call anymore. So basic, basic thing to do. So then what you're going to do is the discoveries. So you're looking at your funder or the business that may hire you to do work or might buy one of your products. So you're going to look at who have they funded in the past. And often this is especially on foundations, it's on their website. There's also a Government of Canada website that you can go to, which I will put in the guide, which tells you where charities have given their money. It's an excellent resource for checking out, just checking out where charities are giving their money. So that's one of the things you're going to do. And then you're going to look at what their priorities and interests are. So you really want to be able to tie to connect the dots between what you're doing and what they're doing. So understanding what they do, it's you know, it's so fascinating to me. It's very much like Tara's presentation in terms of working with your team, right? Like you really need to know your team. You also need to know your funder. So you're going to identify themes and wording from their call or from their RFP, but you want to be careful here because you don't want to be mimicking them. You just want to be able, you want them to see themselves in you. You want them to see the fit. You're going to look at whether they have overarching programs. So some City of Guelph is a good example where they'll have these smaller grants, but these smaller grants or grants, even if they're not smaller, are contributing to the City of Guelph's mandate. So knowing what their mandate is and where their interests are, you know, and for Guelph, it's community building, it's, you know, a culture of connection. So this is knowledge that can be helpful. Will my project advance their goals? When a company puts out an RFP or a foundation has a call for grants, it really, you might feel like it's about you, but it's really about them. So you want to make sure that you're advancing their goals. They want to see a solution in you. So that's key to getting to know your funder. You're going to follow them on social media if you can, if you like. You just want to get to know what makes them tick. Also, there can be updates, particularly for grants on social media. And then you want to look at what are the synergies with my project. So really pulling all of that together. So you want to really know your funder. And this again reminds me of Tara's presentation, and I think it reinforces how running a business is it needs to be very holistic, right? Like you're thinking about all the pieces, all the parts, and hopefully what we'll talk about today or what I'm talking about will give you some ideas, not just for writing grants and proposals, but for marketing in general, working with a team and advancing your goals. So thinking like a funder, your job is to make their job easier and add value to their work. I'll give you an example. Royal Bank, RBC, has quite a bit of funding, and they have many funding programs, and they have two people who work full-time on going through funding applications. So 8 hours a day, two people, 5 days a week, pretty much is what they do. So you need to think about that person sitting in that chair, and you need to get their attention, right? And you need to add value. You need to stand out a little bit. So think like a funder. It's really, really key. Know your audience is essentially what it is. Know your client, and they are a prospective client.
Barbara, we have a question for you.
Sure.
So Patricia asks, would it be helpful and efficient to build a template with all the information typically requested in grants and proposals and then add to it when additional questions arise? And then she says this might be what you meant by creating directory of common links and info to plug into each grant or RFP as needed.
Yeah, that's a great question. And absolutely. So here's the thing. These all grants to me, in my experience, and all RFPs or proposals for RFPs, they're all a little bit different, but there's that base information. So having a directory or a template is a great idea, but they're all going to be different. But at least you know, okay, this is where I can go to get that kind of information, the stats. So you're creating kind of boilerplate information, but be really mindful that you will need to customize it, and you don't want it to look like it's for it's just what you do for all your proposals. It needs to be customized. And I think what I'll talk about AI for a second is that AI is great for getting you started, but AI so far still looks like AI. Okay, so you want to be careful with that. You can use it to generate some ideas and thoughts, but really putting things into your own words is key, because I think a lot of currently the way AI is working, it's recognizable as AI. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So the funding or the business case, put a 1 in the chat if you have any kind of, just going back to the question, if you have any kind of setup like this, if you've ever done a framework or a template like this. And I'm talking about being proactive about it. So creating something for when the time comes. You put a 1 in the chat. I can't unfortunately see the chat, but
Yep,
just
we're
to get
getting
people.
some ones, a couple ones.
Yeah, good. Because this is all this baseline information is really important. I'm going to get into more detail, your company profile, what the need is that you're fulfilling, your approach, the impact you have, and the budget. So the profile, this is where you're really telling your story about what your service is, what makes you special, you know, what your values are, your reputation. You can have some testimonials here. I love testimonials. They add a lot of value. So this is something, and these are things that you can be building up as the year goes on. So if you have a great relationship with a client, even if you don't have a grant application to put in, they're happy with the service. Hey, would you mind if we got a testimonial from you? So you're building that database for telling your story and strengthening your reputation. So then the proposed project need. So what is it that they're looking for? What do they want? What problem are you solving? And then you want to tailor this section to fit their interests and their needs. You want to use data here, any kind of information that you have from other projects that you can include here. What are some of the collaborations that you're planning for this if you are planning to collaborate? And then the approach, this is usually a really tough one because people tend to not give enough information or too much information. And this is particularly the case with RFPs. So here's an example of where if you get a good approach down, don't lose that, right? And again, going back to, this is the application I put in from the Trillium Foundation. They wanted to know all of these things, and I have them all here in Word. I have them saved. I have the call saved as another file, so I'm organized. And now another opportunity has come up, and they want to know what my approach is. Well, this was a good approach. Trillium liked it, let's say, and you want to build on that. Obviously not the same one, but for me, this is always a bit of a difficult one because of how much do you include and to what detail. So basically the approach is your plan, what the deliverables are, timelines, launch potential, reporting. And reporting is really key, well, for foundations, but also and for companies that are hiring you, because the reporting with companies that are hiring you is that you want to have really open communication and you want to be meeting with them regularly to make sure that you're on track, and you want to recommend that as part of it. For foundations that are giving you funding, or if you're getting funding from a community resource, they may want you to do certain things. So you want to talk about, yes, we're going to put the logo on the website or whatever it is that they're asking for. And you're going to provide the reports. And that's also an understanding. These things take a lot of time. And when you go back to the value of a grant, you got to look at all these things, right? Whether it's worth applying for, and if you have the capacity to follow through, that's that stewardship piece. So to do all the things that are being asked and needed. So the impact and evaluation of what you're doing. So people love to know that they're helping people or a community, and I like to go to the big picture too. So if I'm talking about women-led businesses, for example, I want to talk about, we're a women-led business. We're empowering women to do business, and this, it advances women in business. If you're talking about, let's say, in agriculture example, you want to talk about maybe some of the issues in agriculture that you're solving. If it's a sustainability situation, you could even go as high as, you know, the United Nations, what's being said, and very minimal text, but just providing that context. What's going to, if you get this money, how your business is going to grow, or the difference that you're going to make. And data is always good. So data collection all the time. You can look at, I've started, you know, let's say you're on social media and you just started on social media and you had 80 followers in September and now you're up to, you know, 1,000. This is really good information to keep track of, and because they want to know that you're making a difference. So budget for foundations, and for, in the case of grants, they like you to be pretty specific. So, and this is another reason why getting started on an application sooner than later, in case you have to get quotes from suppliers or, you know, market rates for values. And and the budget is typically like, what's the staff time? Are there in-kind resources? What equipment is going to be needed? Do you have the equipment? Who else is funding you? And questions like that. In the case of an RFP, they're more looking at, I mean, both cases are looking at the value, but they want to know how much time you're going to take to do the work, for example, and how that's going to work with your expenses and your time and your staff time. So that's basically those are basically the categories for putting in a proposal or a grant application. So moving on to, I should pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions? It's a lot and it's very general, but I'm hoping it's going to inspire some creative thinking and also importantly, confidence to pull an application or a proposal together. I have a friend from Wolf Island, and he calls it the 11th commandment. And for him, he says, thou shalt not ask, thou shalt not receive. So having the confidence to believe in your business or your product, with also that realistic aspect of, you know, is it realistic? Does it make sense in mind? Is what I'm trying to empower you with. So writing tips. This is really key. We're writing a winning proposal. So we want to make sure that we use plain language. The person doing the reviewing doesn't necessarily know what these acronyms mean or what some of the technical jargon means. Also, keep it really clear and clean. Use page numbers if it's a proposal for an RFP. I know typically the grant applications are all online now, but just making it as easy for them to read as possible. Grammatically correct goes without saying, but it's amazing how many mistakes there are just that really could have been avoided because the proposal or the application was rushed. Typos, avoid exclamation marks. It's just they start to not mean anything if you use them too much. Correct spelling of names and programs. Double check everything in that regard, because it's also an area where you could slip up. Google what the actual name of the program is. Make sure you double check names. Accuracy there is really important because people take it personally if their name is misspelled. So the style, you want to have, you want to engage the reader, and you want to really, again, go back to thinking about them sitting in that desk, having to review this proposal. So you want to engage with them emotionally, and make sure they can relate to it. And then moving on to connect, they need to see their priorities and values in your proposal. So again, what I mentioned about in the discovery, you want to resonate, but you want to be careful also not to say their words back to them. You want to give the sense that by using other words that you're on the same page, that you're connected. Do the math. Grant reviewers are often number crunchers, so they really, that's what it's about, the numbers. So really double check and make sure your numbers add up, that your math is accurate, that you're not missing anything. Artificial intelligence, it's, as I said, it's your best friend and your worst enemy. I think, we're in a world that's changing very, very quickly in that regard. And like I said earlier, I think for inspiration and for ideas, it's fine, but it's still not going to be able to tell the story of your business the way that you can. So keep that in mind. So then once you get everything written up and ready to go, you're going to read your proposal, you're going to read your application, and then you're going to, here we are, I'm repeating myself, but then you're going to read it again and you're going to read it out loud. The more you learn to communicate and the more practice you get at communicating your business and what you do, you're just going to get better and better at this. And reading out loud, there are some writers that read their work out loud all the time or have someone read it out loud to them. And this raises the point that you do want to get someone else to look at your proposal as well, because it's a second set of eyes, and that's really important. I wouldn't just rely on spell checks, because spell checks, I mean, especially in English, there's a lot of words that are the same, but have two very different meanings. So you actually didn't spell it wrong, but you made a mistake.
Barbara, we had another question in the chat from Lucy. She's asking about sources of grants and where they can look for sources of grants and if there are any general lists. Carly, I know you have some resources for the group after as well, but I wasn't sure if Barbara, you were going to cover this at all either.
Well, we talked about if we have some time at the end, we can touch on it. But what I've done is, and what Carly and I have done is we've put together a list, a good solid list, and that's going to be in the guide at the end. So yeah, I hope that's helpful. I'm not really sure if we have time to talk about it today, although we may. So we can pull it up. And I know something that's not in the guide is I would look at who's funding your competitors. And I wouldn't stop at, Ontario business. I would really look around, do that research and see how are startups getting funding, what resources are they using? And it's not just about funding. It's about resource. I mean, a big part of it is about funding, but it's also about finding resources that support your business. And there's been a lot of investment in growing Ontario businesses and Canadian businesses overall. So yeah, so read your proposal. It's really, really important. This is something, if it's worth it for you to invest this time in a proposal, it's worth it for you to sit down and read it and not leave it to the last minute and rush through it. You want to make a good impression, and you may apply to them again if you don't get this one. So you want to make a good impression. So considerations when you put an application together. Extras. Should I include extra information, samples, etc.? Typically with the grants online, you really just provide what they ask for. There may be a section for anything that would be added value. Make sure it's added value. I know for proposals, responding to a request for proposal, I say no extras. And the reason is if they ask for 3 samples and you give them 4, you're just confusing them. Right? So which ones do they use, and do they, so again, going back to making their job easier. So the timeline, you want to connect the project to the grant timeline. And so that's really understanding the grant process and the grant lifespan. So if it's a grant that's put out in March and they're going to let you know in June, you don't have your project happening in April. Okay, so you really want to think through the timeline of when you're going to do the project and connect it to the grant. Contacting, should I reach out during the process? Again, I think there's a fine line between being noticed and being appreciated and being annoying, right? So that's something, it's a nuance, and I think you have to be a little bit careful. I typically, when I send something in, I thank them for their consideration. I appreciate the time that they're taking to look at my proposal, my application, and I leave it at that. If I haven't heard for quite some time, and you'll get a sense of what that means. Like sometimes they say on the website or in the application, we should let you know by this and this a date. And if you don't hear from them, so then it's fine to contact them. And I would also say that it's also good, and a lot of foundations and even government, when they put out a request for proposal, will take the time to give you a debrief if you don't get it. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So your proposal's finished. It's all ready. So you're going to, again, review it. You're going to have someone unfamiliar with it review it, and you're going to have someone familiar with your business review it. You're going to read it out loud. You're going to revisit numbers, names, and really double check these things. I've seen grants applications get refused for like spelling mistakes, because that's how competitive the field is. They figure if you haven't taken the time to spell that right or to complete a sentence, then they put it to they swipe left or swipe right, whatever it is where you don't want it. And then before you submit it, and I mentioned this earlier, you want to make sure that you have exact copies of everything that you send, copy of the original request for proposal, everything, so that you have, a record for it. It's important. And there may be another grant or opportunity come up with them 2 years later or something. And you say, what was that one we did in, 2020, right? Well, you have it, right? Like this is really, really key to keep organized in this way. So once you have everything, you send the proposal or the application off. And and then you get on to do other work. You kind of forget about it. So where to go from here? What if my project or proposal is not accepted? So again, as I said, you can look at getting a debrief. It's always good to ask. Be an advocate for your business in a positive, just like productive, humble way. Most business leaders want to help others. That's probably why they're in this business. So they can give you a debrief and tell you why it wasn't accepted. If they don't get back to you, you've just really got to let it go, because it's not their obligation. It's a what do you call it? It's an option, but like I said, most of them do it. And if your project or proposal is accepted, well, here's where the work, begins, and the appreciation. And here's where stewardship comes in. And actually, stewardship, if your project is not accepted, I have an arrow there as well. Stewardship is taking care, developing good relations with your donor, your funder, or your client, right? And it's really, really important. I've taken a few stewardship workshops, and one of the key things that always comes up is how bad companies are at stewardship. They get funding, they do they said we have to put in a report, and then they're done, and they don't nurture the relationship. And it's like that expression, a bird in the hand, right? It's really, really important. People like to be thanked. People like to be appreciated. So if you do get if you are accepted, or if you do land a new client with your proposal, you really want to treat them like a VIP. So the top 10 takeaways. The quick assessment. So that's where you're looking at, is it worth my time? And you'll get really good at that. You'll get so that you can, like, within 5 minutes, you'll know the page to go to. You'll be able to, figure it out, make a decision. So you don't have to mull over it and it's done. You're either going with it or you're not. RTM, read the manual twice. I have an older model car that I bought used, and I'd had it for about 5 years. And it was parked in my driveway downtown Guelph one night, and I guess I didn't lock it. And there was nothing in it, but someone rifled through. I could tell the next morning. And when I got in, I was like, oh, but nothing was taken except they pulled down this little flap on the roof, or on the like the interior, and it was a sunglass holder. And I went, wow, I didn't know I had that. Right. So, know your product, know thyself, I guess is what they say. Create that checklist early and a wish list. Something to think about for companies is that if when you're doing brainstorming and talking about things you want to do, create a wish list. So if I had $5,000, this is what I would do. If I had $15,000, we could buy this piece of equipment. So keep a wish list, because sometimes a grant will come up and you'll think, okay, $7,000, what's the project? What are we going to do? $70,000. So really have that as part of your business development, so you're ready to go in. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It's really like an idea sheet, cost, maybe some quotes if somebody has time. Do the things that take time first. Do the things that involve other people first. So when you get that application, I guess it's the call for the grant, then you want to look and say, okay, if I'm going to do this, what do I need to do? What do I need to get on now? Because it involves other people, or it involves some research. The discovery, of course, know your business and know your audience, your client, and try and think like them, like how, and that you're solving a problem for them. Even if it is a grant from a foundation, you're still solving a problem because that foundation has a mandate. So thinking like that. The project need must resonate. You want to follow the writing tips that I gave you. Lots of reviewing and revising, and thinking like a funder or a reviewer. You're really trying to think like them. Put yourself in their shoes. Think about your audience. And then you want to stay connected, of course, social, etc. And so those are the top 10 takeaways. And that's the presentation. So I'd welcome any questions or comments.
Feel free to put the questions in the chat, give people a little bit of time to type that out, or you can raise your Zoom hand and we can call on you if you'd like to ask Barbara questions directly.
I'd like to add too, if I may, Carly, that as part of this, if people want to reach out to me, I just noticed something in the chat about looking for grants in the construction industry. We haven't really broken it down that specifically, but I'd be happy to jump on a 30-minute call, just gratis, just to kind of brainstorm through that and get you thinking about where you could look in that sector. So feel free to reach out to me.
While people might still be thinking about their question, Barbara, I just had a comment / something I wanted to reinforce, because we have programs here at Boundless and we have applicants and sometimes we have seed funding programs, etc. And I know you mentioned in your presentation, like contacting the funder or the grant source to maybe ask a question during the process, because maybe you need clarification. So I just want to reiterate that, also kind of being on the other end, being that like funder, if you will, when people are applying to us. And I know Jordan can also agree with this. Like, we are often happy to answer questions. Like, maybe someone asks, can you clarify, what are you asking when you ask this question? Or can you share the grading rubric? So we are always happy to help answer questions for applicants before they hit submit. So even while it's a program, not necessarily a grant, like, I just really want to encourage folks on the call to feel free to reach out and ask those kinds of questions. They may not have time to get back to you depending on how big they are. But it's always nice so that you can answer exactly the question or tailor your answers to that rubric.
That's a great point, Carly. And I think, most foundations and organizations like Boundless Accelerator they're prepared for that, and they actually encourage it. They like the engagement. If it's government, it's not necessarily so easy to access someone to talk to, but often what they'll do, especially for RFPs, is they'll give you a timeline for questions. So that's another reason why you want to read through the RFP to see, because that might be something that's, and deadline for questions is, and you missed it because you were just looking at what's that mandatory criteria or that point rated criteria. So keep that in mind too. And then typically what they'll do is they'll gather the questions and then they'll do an amendment to the RFP.
There's a question in the chat for you, Barbara. Lucy asks how you feel about consultants like Granted Consulting, or maybe we can just broaden that to your thoughts on other consultants and how they work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think like hiring any consultant, you want to really have a clear terms of reference of what you need and expectations and what the dollar value associated with that, like what it's going to cost you. I think every business needs some kind of system in place for that, where they, for example, I'm working with a festival right now, community festival, and history been going on for years, and we're taking a new approach where we're introducing people, paid individuals to help us, and we're scaling it. So like start with this small project for us, and we'll see how it goes. We do all its due diligence. We have the formal quote. We have their CV, not just their website, their CV. We have a letter of agreement. So I think really putting those pieces in place is key for hiring any consultant. One thing I want to mention here too is I don't know has anybody heard of a letter of inquiry? Put a one in the chat if you've heard of a letter of inquiry. So it's an LOI is what they call it in fundraising. Yeah, Patricia's heard of it. So basically what a foundation might do, and government actually does this too sometimes to see what the level of interest is for sourcing consultants. But what the foundations will do is they'll say, we're not taking applications, but you can send us a letter of inquiry. So I'm working on a project right now where we've identified 10 foundations that fit the bill for the work that we're doing, and we're going to send them 10 letters of inquiry. It does tend to have if you're really good at identifying a good fit, it's a pretty good way to start networking and start conversations with some of these foundations. So it's called a letter of inquiry. In fact, I could put one in the guide because I didn't talk about it today, but I can just put a sample. Often with a letter of inquiry, you're not asking for money. You're just introducing yourself and the work that you do and wondering if there might be a fit and you'd love to have a conversation with them. So you're getting your name on the radar.
Perfect. Thanks, Barbara. Did anyone else have questions, like to take advantage of Barbara's knowledge?
Yeah, or any pain points, experiences that you've had that you just want to talk about? I think going back to the working with consultants, it's a difficult realm in many ways because there's no guarantees anywhere, but with fundraising, it's a really tough, it's tough out there right now. And so all the more reason you want to introduce someone slowly and see what, how it works, as opposed to putting someone on a retainer or contract for long term or even 6 months. I would go even smaller than that. That's just me. You may want to do it differently, but I've found in my experience that to earn the trust and to see if it is of value, especially for a small business, that's a good way to go.
Perfect. Thanks, Barbara. I did, if it's okay with you, I did pull up some of the resources that I had put together, and I know that I'm going to send your way just so that I can go over a couple of those grant, loan, and also another source of resources is supplier diversity program. So I'm just going to put up some slides here. And again, these are going to be shared after our call today. But just to take folks through a couple, and just give me a second here. And when you get this list, each of the slides has a link to it. So you can actually click on the link and it'll take you right to that website. But just give me a moment here. So I covered this slide earlier in my presentation, but these are just some of the grants that I often refer to folks to. So you can kind of search on your own. So one of them being ISEDS, that's from the Government of Canada directly, their business benefits finder. They have both a website option and they also have a downloadable app that you can download right on your phone that breaks out. Maybe it's sector, maybe it's women, or maybe it's for youth-led companies. It's kind of categorized in a couple different ways. So one tool that I often share with clients is that Canada Business Benefits Finder, kind of like a Google for some grants. It also covers funding and programs outside of grants as well. I did list Granted as well as a resource because it's also a great website to help Canadian companies get grant funding. They've got a couple different tiers to help companies get connected to grants, including support with the grant writing piece as well. One of the programs that often has different calls depending on where they're going to get export, also by sector, is Can Export Grants. So it offers competitive funding to help eligible Canadian small and medium-sized enterprises expand into new international markets. And I know that there was a recent call just opened a couple weeks ago that's open until the end of May. So specifically, they've got those target windows and you can kind of explore when you look at that website as well. Another resource, it used to be called MentorWorks, but now it's called Ryan. It is also kind of like a search feature, so it helps companies apply for Canadian government grants, tax credits, and loans for businesses. So these are a couple of different kind of Google, if you will, search resources for the grant piece. And I know we didn't talk about it specifically, but also just loans is another option of funding for companies. So I'd mentioned at the top of our call, the NVenture partnership that Boundless currently has with, we have an MOU with them. So we can work with women-led companies who are currently with Boundless or alumni to help deploy innovation capital for women entrepreneurs. So the partnership really helps cut that red tape and give access to capital to women-led companies faster. I'm the contact for that. You can feel free to send me questions if you'd like to learn more. There is a link there to the Delia loans specifically on that link on my screen here. Another cool resource that's national is the WEOC National Loan Program. That's the Women Enterprises Organization. So it supports big dreams of Canada's women entrepreneurs with loans of also up to $5,000. And depending on where you're located in the country, they'll refer you to specific organizations. Like, for example, I know that PARO is the organization that supports Ontario-based companies. I also want to plug to Scotiabank's Women Initiative. Scotiabank being a bank, of course, but they do have tailored programming for women entrepreneurs, as well as access to loans and other resources, education, and mentoring. So full list here. And the other thing I wanted to touch on as well is supplier diversity programs. So if you're not familiar what a supplier diversity program is, if folks fall into a certain, if you identify as certain, like I'll say category for lack of a better phrase right now, you can be part of these supplier diversity programs to help kind of put your company and services in front of big purchasers. So when we're talking about like requests for proposals, I just wanted to add that as a resource. So I put 4 on the screen here: Canadian Aboriginal Minority Supplier Council, CAMC, the Canadian Queer Chamber of Commerce, otherwise known as CQCC, the Inclusive Workplace Supply Council of Canada, representing veterans or people with disabilities, and We Connect International as well, which supports women business owners who are 51% managed, owned, or controlled by women. So each of these supplier diversity programs has different resources to help your company if you fall kind of identify with one of those different categories. And as a perk partner for the first three, if you go to that partner page on Boundless's website, we do have discounts to memberships. So for those first three pieces. So this just touches on a couple different categories. And I know, Barbara, your list has a couple more, but since we had time, I just wanted to cover a couple of these different resources for folks. Yeah.
Thanks, Carly. And I just wanted to say that the WEOC loan, because I'm going to make it sound even better, is actually 50,000, not 5,000. So, and I think you have 5 years to pay it back. So that's a pretty good one. Yeah,
that's a great resource.
Does anyone have any questions, like while I'm here, that you want to ask? Anything you'd like to see in the presentation if it was done again? Like, did I miss anything? Another place to look for grants is regional tourism organizations. So Ontario is divided into, I think it's 14 regional tourism organizations. It's primarily focused on promoting tourism, but that could be like an agricultural based, like a food product. For example, I know a business in Tobermory that makes freeze-dried fruits and sells them at markets and things like that. So it's a pretty what's the word? It's worth looking at to see if you might qualify. I mean, you can parlay a business into something that fits somebody else's needs too, and it's usually somewhat broad. So that's another place, the regional tourism organizations. The other thing is looking at, and I'm going to put this in the guide, but looking at budgets. So when the municipality puts out its budget, when the province puts out its budget, federal government, and look where money's being invested and how you might be able to tap into that. If it's a really large investment, there's going to be offshoots of grants and collaboration opportunities with that funding. So keeping an eye on that is good. And even going to the government bidding sites like mercs.com, it's an interesting place just to look at where the government is spending money. Some of the calls for products are really not what you would expect. For example, recently I saw one for potato chips for the Ontario prisons. So it's worth having a look to see where the government is spending money and how there might be a fit with your business.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Barbara, for taking us through that.
My pleasure.
Just give it a second. I'm just going to do some closing thoughts if folks still had a couple questions in the chat. So I really appreciate your presentation, Barbara, as well. I really liked the point about reading the manual twice. I know that's something that folks often kind of just give things a quick read and maybe miss some key points there. So that's one of my takeaways from your presentation. So as we kind of end our time here, I'd just like to thank everyone on the call for attending, and a special thank you as well to NRC-IRAP for funding this education event and partnering with us on the program. We always welcome feedback on the events we hold. So when you close your browser today, there will be a survey link, just a quick couple questions that we would love your feedback on both of our presenters and our education event today. If you can just take a little bit of time to fill that out. We will follow up with an email that contains the slides, resources, and the survey link as well. So give us a little bit of time to edit the recording and we'll send that out as soon as we can. It will also include in the future a link to a French captioned version as well. So once again, on behalf of Boundless Accelerator, Jordan and I and my facilitators would really thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of day and take care, everybody. Thank you so much.